Welcome to the One Stiletto in the Grave podcast with your hosts, Sonny Ormond and Jane James.
Well, hello, lovely listeners. We have a truly memorable show for you today. Lilian's all aflutter. And why could this be? Well, think Costa Rica, think prison tags, think tigers. Are you there yet? Yes, our guest today is none other than the bad boy of Borsetshire, the artful dodger of Ambridge, the love of Lilian's life, the man behind the voice of Matt Crawford, actor Kim Durham. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. Are you ready to cast off those dull old blacks and greys and embrace colour? Kettlewell sells high-quality wardrobe essentials in more than 300 colours. From everyday basics to jackets, skirts, dresses and scarves, each Kettlewell style comes in a range of colours in 4 seasonal palettes, so you can choose the exact shade for your skin tone. And when you wear your perfect shade, your skin looks fresh, glowing and youthful. We're ready to embrace the rainbow. Are you? Visit Kettlewell at www.kettlewellcolours.co.uk.
Kim, Sonny and I are thrilled to have you as our guest today. I think Lilian is a little bit overcome.
Hello, pussycat. I've done that wrong, you know. I was told this when I came back after being away in Costa Rica or wherever for a long time. I just had one line, which was, hello, pussycat. And I kept saying, hello, pussycat. And they said, oh, no, that's wrong. It's 2 syllables, not 3. So I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Hello, pussycat.
You just thrilled all the Archers listeners out there, Kim.
Oh, no, hello, tiger. Well, this is so exciting.
Pussycat.
It's so thrilling. It's so thrilling. It's great. Oh, thank you so much for coming on to the show, Kim. Really thrilled. Now, look, we're going to talk lots about Matt and Lilian and Archers and things like that. But before we do that, we just chat a little bit about pre-actory things that you did. Because didn't you train as a teacher?
I did.
Did you teach for a bit?
Yeah, because I only discovered an interest in acting when I was at teacher training college. We didn't do anything like that. I did science A-levels and I wasn't allowed to be in the school play because of that. So I discovered acting at teacher training college. Then I did actually apply, or dare I say this? I applied for Bristol Law Vic Theatre School and didn't get in.
Oh,
and 1 or 2 other places. And then I became a teacher for a few years and couldn't really give up the bug. So we sort of formed our own little theatre company, and then eventually I joined a fringe company, got my equity card, and that was it. And, you know, like all actors, you have to have another thing that you fall back on to earn some money. And I used to do a bit of supply teaching when I wasn't acting as well, yeah.
what did you teach then, Kim?
Well, I taught primary initially, so you teach everything. And then when I did supply, I did secondary. And, of course, you cover everything pretty much. I even finished up at one school teaching A-level history, not having O-level history myself. And actually, it was the best teaching I ever did, I think, because I was always just 1 week ahead and really enthused about what I'd just learned.
Oh, fantastic.
Now, am I right in thinking that one of your first jobs was you were touring Europe and the UK? And didn't you do one of your first gigs in a dope club in Amsterdam?
Oh, my very first gig.
Was it?
Very first gig at the Melkweg in Amsterdam, where the audience sat on this vast kind of auditorium cushion and were all high. So it was a comedy, but they laughed in the most random places.
I was going to say it would be fortunate then if it was a comedy, but not if they laughed in the most random places. Timing must have been a bit off then.
Oh, no idea. Yeah. I mean, that came later.
Bizarre. And then again, are we right in this, that you actually got to kick a ball on the turf at Wembley?
Absolutely. I had a small part in what was it called, the film? It was a lovely film.
Mike Bassett.
Mike Bassett, you've done the research, yeah. Mike Bassett, England manager. And I had been called up completely by mistake by the manager, Mike Bassett, who was played by Ricky Tomlinson. And the gag was he drew up his team on the back of a fag packet. And then he said, what are these two doing here? Where does it say Benson and Hedges? And so I was Benson, and I was the oldest player in the Premier League, I think, supposedly at the time. But we were actually on the old Wembley turf just before they took it all down and built the new Wembley with the arches. So that was a fantastic privilege to run out on the Wembley turf. Yeah.
How fantastic. And were you cast for your football skills then, Kim?
No.
Oh, right.
No. I didn't even actually get to kick a ball, I don't think. But I did a lot of running up and down the touchline, getting ready, doing a few exercises and stuff like that. And shouting abuse at the referee.
Oh, that sounds like a great job, actually.
It was a good gig, yeah.
Oh, it's great. But I mean, you've played lots of theatre, lots of radio, lots of voice work, obviously, and you seem to, I think, played everything from Ford Prefect in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to Iago in Othello. Haven't you? That must have been fun. A few similarities there, possibly with Matt Crawford, maybe.
Iago? Oh, story of my life, really. Even actually not always on radio, but on TV and stage, I've mostly played kind of. I always used to say I played rodents because
Rodents.
I remember I did 2 productions of Wind in the Willows, and in one I was Chief Weasel, and in another I was Ratty. And I think, this is my typecasting. And even Matt is has certain rodent-like features.
But how can you say this when really he's a tiger? And they did, Lilian and Matt were just so popular with the listeners, weren't they? Why do you think that? I mean, apart from the fact that you're both fantastic actors, but did it take you by surprise? Why do you think it happened?
Now, I think there's a story about how Matt and Lilian really became regulars. Because for a long time, I think I was in it before you, wasn't I?
Yes, you were. Yeah.
But I was only in it very occasionally as this sort of city boy who'd come in to, and it was a thing, like they always do, try to follow what's really happening in the countryside. Yeah. The city was recognising that agricultural land was an asset that was really worth having, which is why Matt came in. He was a city boy and then started investing in agricultural land, and that's how he got into dealing with Brian Aldridge. And for a few years, he would just come in a couple of episodes a year and just whisper bad stuff into Brian Aldridge's ear.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Lilian came back into it after many years. And I think it's fair to say, Sonny, we sort of nudged it a bit, didn't we? We had the idea that maybe these two could get together. And it was, I remember asking Vanessa Whitburn, who was the editor, had been the editor at the time, how much it was us and how much it was the writers putting the two of us together. And she said it was very much both. And it's a fantastic thing about long form drama like The Archers. The end has not been written. It's the only thing we do as actors where the end has not yet been written. So you're able subtly to influence things as actors. So the writers write lovely stuff for you. You take it, but then maybe edge it a little bit in a way that you think could be interesting. They, if you're lucky, pick up on it and run with it. And I think, I mean, I checked with Vanessa if that's what happened. And she said, yeah, very much so. That's how it happened. It was sort of both the writers and the actors pushing it a little bit until we could have a proper relationship. But then there was that weird thing after we just got it together, where I remember Vanessa Whitburn coming to me and saying, research tells us that because she's come from the Channel Islands, she has to go back for 2 years for tax purposes.
Really?
Yes, so I think they just developed this storyline of this developing relationship, and then they had to put it on hold for 2 years.
That's right.
until Lilian could come back.
That's right. I do remember the shock when I was when I was told that that's what was going on, because I was out. Yeah, I'd sort of made this impressive entrance as well, all guns blazing, and then they realised this, and I think I was out then for 18 months, and they said, they were very sweet. They said, look, really sorry about this, but I was out for 18 months, and then obviously started to re-record again, which would make up the 2 years that you're talking about. Yes, it was a bit of a shock, but I suppose as well, I think radio is an interesting thing, isn't it? Vocally, I guess they probably thought, oh, these two might sound quite interesting together, just vocally. And I do remember, I don't know if you remember this, Kim, we had a scene, I think it's after when we were kind of beginning to get together, but in the very early stages, and we had a scene with Jennifer and Brian, and Jennifer was pretty outraged that I was wanting to bring you for supper, bring you for dinner. And I think that was the first time for me personally, because the relationship wasn't really happening then. I think it was very much in its infancy. But I remember hearing that scene when we'd done it, and I thought, I can hear now the beginnings. I can hear what they're hearing, the beginning of this relationship. The voices just blended. The character voices, I think, that we created just blended, as well as the characters. I mean, both slightly mad and perfect for each other in a way.
Absolutely.
I think. So, how about Matt's voice? Because I know the story about my laugh and everything.
Yeah, because I don't sound like
your
Matt.
voice. How did you get that voice?
Well, I've got. You know how we all create narratives. I think I've got 2 different narratives for this, and I'm not quite sure which is the true one. I'm pretty sure the first time I recorded, I had a touch of bronchitis. So he was down there, and he was even more down there than he became later. And even though it sort of fitted the character that I was playing, and the other story I've got, and I think there's a bit of an overlap. When I was cast, I read the script. I just heard on the radio a guy called Philip Green, who you may remember ran Top Shop and all those things. And he came across as a right white boy, a right villain, but quite funny with it, And I sort of, I think, based it a little bit on him. And here's the amazing thing, I think, that radio does, because occasionally we do meet people who don't know we're doing the Archers, and then they're interested, and then they discover you play. And pretty often people look at me and go, Matt Crawford. Oh, no. Because I don't look like everybody's picture of Matt Crawford. And in my mind, when I do Matt Crawford, I sort of see Philip Green. And the weird thing is that I think most people who listen to it get something like that themselves. Barrel-chested, sweat-back, dark hair. A bit jowly, and that's what I think I'm doing. I don't know how that works on radio. It's miraculous, but that's one of the extraordinary things about radio. You can play wildly different physical types. I mean, both Sonny and I used to do a lot of radio drama even before the Archers, and I think a director said to me once, could you do your fat voice?
That's brilliant.
And I don't know if you're even allowed to say that now. And I was once in a radio drama described as having the body of a Greek god. Nice. That is the only time that has ever been said to me on radio. You can do it on radio.
Well, as we see him, Sonny and I, sitting here, naked torso, looking as he does, as if he's reclining in marble. we have to
that
say
was
he has
the
the body of a
instructions I
Greek
was
god.
given.
So what character breakdown were you given for Matt then?
Oh,
What
none.
were you told about him?
None.
Nothing.
No, none at all. That's the extraordinary thing. I think because he was originally only a very occasional character, they told me nothing, not even where he came, what part of the country he came from. It was clear he was a city boy, and he was full of himself and a bit vulgar, I suppose. But that was what you read from the script. But apart from that, it was just what was on the page. Oh, look how we filled that out.
Look how we did fill that out. But I mean, that's another sort of an interesting question. I mean, obviously, when Lilian and Matt got together, how did that sort of, do you think, develop Matt as a character? You presumably were able to start to sort of look at different aspects of him that you hadn't before.
Yeah, I think so, because he was, as I say, you bring in a character like that, and he's completely two-dimensional, really. And Lilian did give him a third dimension, because this was a man who really had a very big heart in certain ways. So that was another aspect to him. And then later on, I thought the writers did some really clever things. I remember when we decided, and it's kind of the backstory being created as you go on. When they decided that he was adopted.
Oh, yes.
And then there was that story where Lilian persuaded him to look up and find his birth mother. And what I really loved about that story was eventually he did, but instead of going down the soapy route of going, and that changed everything, he became a new person and he developed this other relationship. Meeting his mother was just a sort of damp squib. And it was, like reality. It didn't fulfill all the expectations that had been built up. And I really thought that was clever in the storyline developers to have something that actually felt like truth. It wasn't an easy, look what happens now, So those are the ways I think some of the writers did develop them both in very clever ways, I think.
They did, and I think, the Costa Rica story, for instance, when you were in prison finally, but, you absconded. I mean, we had some terrifically emotional ding-dong scenes, didn't we?
Yeah.
If you'd asked me in 2004, when it was we first got together, would we be going down those sorts of routes, I would have said no, because actually they're, not that they were superficial characters, but, they were larger than life, a bit of fun. But actually it was really lovely that we were able to explore all that, I think, together. And also great because we've known each other, you and I, for a long time, long before we became Matt and Lilian. We were in an agency together, and as you say, we've done lots of radio together. So that was one of the things I always cherished and loved about it, was the fact that we did know each other, and we were kind of developing these different characters, and it was always a joy to come into work and think, because I knew what a good actor you were. Well, where are we going to go with this? And they did. You're absolutely right. The writers took us places that we didn't think that we would.
No, I mean, but it was sort of, there was a logic to a reason, a rationale to it. You could believe the way they took those characters, but they became filled right out, didn't they, in the end?
Absolutely.
Which was great.
And I think maybe I'd not thought of it before, but from what you're just saying, Kim, I guess as listeners, we were experiencing those characters kind of developing in real time, weren't we? Because they were discovering things about themselves, and we were discovering that at the same time as you were.
Yeah, that is the great thing about long form drama, isn't it? Things can take place over a long period of time, which obviously they can't in anything else, really.
No. Do you like Matt?
Do you know, it's I often, people still sort of, when they meet you, they discover you're Matt Crawford, they go, oh, he was such a villain, wasn't he? And my automatic reaction is, oh, not entirely. And I get a bit huffy about that he's such a villain. If I met him in real life, would I like him? No, probably not. But it's a difficult question, because I always feel, and I think actors generally do feel a bit defensive about characters they play, even the bad ones, because one of the things you always try to do as an actor, if you're playing a villain, you try to find little bits of good, and vice versa. If you're playing a saint, you find a little bit of naughtiness somewhere. So I think because of the three-dimensional thing, I always felt, I did have a soft spot for him,
Now, pretend that I'm not Lilian, as I'm going to throw this question out at you. Do you think that he loved or loves Lilian? Loved her?
Completely. Absolutely. I think he's still sitting there in is it Peru? Is it? He's not in Costa Rica.
No, somewhere in South America. Isn't it?
Yeah, Central America, South America. Yeah. Oh, I think he's pining for her. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I think it's the one. Yeah, I think it's the lodestone of his life.
And do you think he regrets then everything that he did?
Hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he really regretted that. What he did to her and all her family.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I always reckon, now back in Lilian, that definitely he is the love of her life. And I think it's... Because I always maintained, when Lilian started to have the affair with Paul, who was Matt's brother, people used to say to me, oh, how can she do this? She's with Matt. And I said, well, actually, it was not easy for her. But in my mind, Matt and Paul looked very, very alike. And I justified it by feeling that Paul was able to give her the love that actually Matt found quite difficult to do overtly, and that was why she, that happened. Because you do have to justify it as an actor, don't you? When you've been in a long-term relationship on air, you think, well, hang on a minute, they've come through their ups and downs. This is quite something for her to do. But he's the one that always got away. Yeah. She could never quite snare him. And
Matt always had a sort of emotional illiteracy, really, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was that's probably, was that me pinging? Sorry. He always had an emotional illiteracy, which was obviously always terribly frustrating for Lilian.
Today's podcast is sponsored by MTL Associates. Would you like a website but don't know where to start? Could your business do with that bit extra? It's less than you think. MTL Associates produces websites for people like you. They'll agree a fixed price for their work, starting from £50 for a 5-page website using one of their templates. And after that, it can be as little as £14 a month. MTL Associates. It's you, but online.
So, do either of you, both you, think that Lilian would forgive Matt?
I'm waiting.
Yeah, I think she would. I think it's very similar to what, it's interesting because I don't think we've ever had this conversation actually, Kim, have we? It's interesting what you're saying about your thoughts about Matt, and I think she would. I just think the depth of their relationship, it was such for her that she would. Yeah,
she. I that's kind of what I feel, that she would have him back, and I see Rod Stewart's just got remarried to somebody he divorced years ago. So
Yeah, I think so. I think Justin is, he's got a nice big fat bank account, hasn't he? And he's very happy for her to spend money, and she's got a bigger kitchen than Jennifer had, and all that sort of stuff. But I think she'd run away and live with Matt in a caravan.
Yes. So fascinating, so fascinating. What do you think that Matt's up to now then, Kim?
I think he's wheeling and dealing in, I think it's Peru. I should know, shouldn't I? But I'm not playing him now, so I'm not doing the research, I suppose. Because he could, I can't remember why he didn't go back to, I think he got in trouble in Costa Rica.
So.
He got into some dodgy dealings over there, didn't he, about a racetrack or something? So he's gone somewhere else that he can't be extradited from. Yeah. I'm sure he will fall on his feet. He always does that.
And he's probably hitched up with some woman somewhere. Do you think? Oh no, borrowed brow here.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think, yeah, but it would never be serious.
No.
Yeah.
Because I think Lilian is still, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to wait to see what happens. Well, you never know, do you? We don't know, because it was great when you came back, wasn't it? Was it 2017 that you came back?
Yeah, it was a nice little story.
15,
It was
that was a
Murder
really
on
nice...
the Orient Express, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
He screwed over everybody in the village. Everybody had a reason to bump him off.
He did.
But, can he come back? I mean, he did defraud Auntie Lilian, didn't he? Yeah. Out of all her nest eggs.
Auntie Christine.
Auntie Christine.
Auntie Christine, not Auntie Lilian, Auntie Christine.
Yeah.
So,
but he had taken all of
if
his
he's done that,
yeah,
that's it. He's cursed forever.
Yeah.
And I think he could never become, I don't think, fully part of village life. Even when we were regular. I remember saying to Vanessa, who was the editor at the time, if you put Matt in the village panto, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Oh God, no, he'd never do that.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's a thing that happens to bad characters in the Archers sometimes. They get softened off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never wanted that to happen.
We could have played the rat though, Dick Whittington, couldn't he? That would have been perfect.
But I think that's why he was so interesting in the village, because the village couldn't tame him.
Yeah.
Lilian couldn't tame him, and the village couldn't tame him. The village are quite used to kind of ganging up in a subtle way and getting people under their thumb.
Yeah, that bucolic paradise sort of softens everybody off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, slightly moving on from all that, of course, whilst latterly that you were playing Matt, you were also teaching, weren't you, at Bristol Theatre School? You were a tutor there. How was that for you? I mean, were you sort of a bit full circle, really, going back to your early days?
Going back to the place that rejected me when I auditioned. And it was years before I would admit that to anybody that I was teaching.
Really? And now you admitted it to the world.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. It was a great combination to be able to do that and do the Archers, because I ran the international course at the school. So I kind of drew up my own timetable. So it fitted around, because as I'm sure the listeners know, we're all freelancers on the Archers. We're only booked episode to episode. So I was able to work my availability around the teaching at the school very nicely. So it was a lovely combination. Occasionally it involved a pretty fast drive from Birmingham back to Bristol, but no, it worked really well.
So what was the international course, Kim? Was that international students?
There was a point where the funding that the government gave to Bristol, because it was considered one of the elite drama schools, was very dependent on the number of UK students they offered places to. So they had to stop giving places to students from international students. So they created this separate course, which was mainly Canadians, Americans, Australians, a few others as well. And so it was a 1-year course, run alongside the other courses in the school. So it involved very nicely nipping over to the States from time to time to audition applicants. I never went to Australia. I had somebody to do that for me over there, and they sent us the videos. But it was a lovely time, actually. It was a lovely job to be involved in, and I'm still in contact with a lot of those ex-students.
Delightful. And when you were there, you met John Hartock, who was he head of acting?
He was, a wonderful, brilliant head of acting courses at the school, a wonderfully kind, avuncular presence in the school, deeply caring and very good at what he did, a real expert on Shakespeare, and a real class act.
And you and he, of course, great mates. And you have also started your own podcast, you guys, haven't you?
Well, from your inspiration, you two, I've been toying around with the idea for quite a while. It's taken us ages to get together 6 half-hour episodes of a podcast called How to Be Old. Because a bit like One Stiletto in the Grave, it comes upon you sort of rather suddenly that I'm now considered aged. I'm now one of the elderly. And it really hit me. I'd been in Bristol for 10 years and I came back to living in London. We might touch on the reason for that later. Came back to living in London and so started using public transport, started using the tube quite a lot, and discovered quite quickly that people were getting up to offer me a seat. Middle-aged women were getting up to offer me a seat. And you think, what's going on here? And you see, oh, I've moved into that age bracket, have I? And it's that weird thing, because if you're fortunate, as I'm incredibly fortunate to be physically pretty fit still, you think, what are they seeing when they look at me? I've developed certain strategies to try to avoid being offered seats on the tube. And if you want to know what they are, you'll have to listen to the podcast.
It's a lovely podcast. It really is.
Thank you.
I've listened to the first 2 episodes, and it's absolutely delightful. Starts with a sort of monologue from you, and then you and John having a chat, and then John does a song that he's written himself at the end, and it's a very, very, very good listen. Where can listeners find your podcast, Kim?
It's I don't know if you put things up on site. We haven't really started seriously the process of marketing it. I don't really know how to do that. It's you'd have to Google How to Be Old, all one word.
Yeah.
Dot Buzzsprout, Buzz and then Sprout, all one word, which is a platform for podcasts.
Yeah.
.com.
Fine.
So it's howtobeold.buzzsprout.com. And I'd love people to listen to it. I don't know how these things get passed word to mouth, as shared or whatever, because I think the real beauty of it at the end, I think John writes the most wonderful songs. They're funny, they're wry, they're quite moving sometimes. He's a terrific songwriter. And if nothing else, I'd love this podcast to really get his songs more widely listened to.
Well, I agree, like Janie. I mean, I've listened to the first two episodes, you sent them over, and I love them both, but particularly the second episode. Your beautiful monologues, I mean, and they really are beautiful. You completely drew me in, and then you guys chat, you and John chat, and then the song in the second ep he wrote is just stunning, and I don't want to spoil it for listeners. You have to go and find that and listen, because
there's a twist in the middle of it, isn't there? Yeah.
And what he's cleverly done, of course, with the songs, he writes the songs really as a result of the chats that you've had and the content of the episode. It's very clever.
That was the idea.
So really highly recommend people. I can't wait for the third ep. But we can put something out for you, can't we, on our site?
Yeah. That's great. We'll put it in the episode notes. We'll put a link to it.
Because when we were looking at subjects for podcasts, we looked up the idea of, I mean, it was the thing that hit both of us, this kind of suddenly discovering you're in a different age bracket. And it really hit obviously strongly at the beginning of COVID, when we were being described as the vulnerable.
Yes.
They're looking around, and sort of the stuff there is for older listeners was tended to be how to keep fit, and how to look after your pension. And ours is about none of that. It's just about, oh God, how do we cope with this sort of psychological barrier of having to recognise we're now elderly?
Yes, absolutely. And that's really what started One Stiletto in the Grave off, because it was my son Jake, who, of course, he was obviously much younger than us, who listens to lots of podcasts, and he said, Mum, there isn't much out there for older people. And so he was kind of the beginning of our journey, and then you start to investigate that, and as you say, there wasn't. But yeah, really highly recommend How to Be Old. Everyone out there, it's a fabulous listen. But listen now, there's a bit of a wicked rumour here, Kim Durham, that Matt might be having a little tryst with Ruth Archer.
I know, it's so weird, isn't it?
True.
It's so weird. People find it really hard to get their head around that. Because the extraordinary thing was we were together in the Arches for quite a few years. I think in all that time we had 2 scenes together. And never just the 2 of us. Always a group. And it's maybe something you don't kind of compute when you're listening to it, that there are some storylines and some characters that rarely coincide. So for years Felicity and I would meet in the green room and we sort of socialise a bit, but we never had any on mic relationship really at all.
But certainly off mic.
Well, it developed over years. Well, and it developed, actually, we were talking about Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. It sort of started there, really. One of the things I did with the international students was Bristol's very good at doing radio drama. But radio drama wasn't much used for Australians or Canadians or Americans, because they don't really do a lot of radio drama anywhere else except the UK, as far as I can see. So my radio was more voiceover, documentary voiceover. And I had a very good woman who did that. And when I was booking her, I could do it, but there's this one week, well, I've got to go to America. I can't do that week. Oh, blimey. Who do I know that could step in for that 1 week and do some radio documentary voiceover stuff? Oh, I know. Felicity, who does as well as playing Ruth, is a terrific radio documentary maker.
That's right.
So I got her down for the day, and then we had a drink afterwards, and she stayed for a meal. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Now, I had an ace up my sleeve here, because I was getting quite interested. I had 2 tickets for Bruce Springsteen. Oh. Now there's an offer, isn't it? Yeah. I always buy if I'm going to a sort of a rock concert, I always buy 2, even if I don't know who I might go with, because who wants to go on their own, So I said, well, you're interested, and she was far more interested in seeing Bruce Springsteen than she was interested in going out with me, understandably. But that was our first. She did come, and we enjoyed it, but nothing particularly happened until quite a few weeks later. But now, that was 10 years ago.
Gosh, 10 years.
And Bruce Springsteen is coming to London this summer. And especially for our anniversary, of course. Oh. So we've got tickets for that at an exorbitant price. But that will be our 10th anniversary celebration.
Oh, I love it.
That's a story, isn't it?
That's a great
story.
It's a
fabulous story. And I have to say, you are 2 of the kindest and most wonderful people. And it was, it is literally a marriage made in heaven. I can remember actually, as before you guys got together, occasionally, you'd have a break between eps and things. And I can remember, I don't know why, we often used to go out for coffee, the 3 of us. This is long before you got together. And I do remember thinking, oh, they're such nice people, these 2. It'd be nice if they got together. So there you go. There you go. I weaved my magic.
You must have done, yeah. Fantastic. And it's,
So it's and in fact, we're going to be seeing you a bit later on, aren't we? You and Flick are going to be...
we're coming down to you later in the day. It's we haven't really covered this. It might be something for a future podcast. Is like when older people get together in a relationship. It's quite interesting.
Yes. Yes.
And
that's a really good idea for podcast.
Isn't it? Yeah, but it's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Well, just great. Now look, apart from the fact that you've got an open water diving qualification, you also, don't you, Mr. Durham? You play the harmonica, because weren't you in a group at one point?
Oh God, years and years ago, when I was a teenager, really.
But you still play that
very occasionally. I mean, I have a few blues riffs up my sleeve. There was a band called the Yardbirds.
I remember the Yardbirds. I remember that.
Their first album was a live album. And basically what we did covers of all their stuff, and that's what I used to play. And it's not developed far beyond that, but yeah, it was a fun thing to do for a while.
Well, look, we there's something we'd like you to do possibly at the end of the programme, which we're almost there, and thank you so much for being with us. But one of the things that we always ask our guests is, what would you like to say to your younger self?
Oh Lord.
Oh, sorry.
I suppose the obvious things, I guess, like be kind, because the older I get, the more I realise that everybody is dealing with stuff that you probably don't know about. Anything else? Well, I might say to keep your eye out for a little Californian setup called Microsoft that'll be looking for backers for their little enterprise.
That's a good one.
And they might offer shares. That would be what I'd probably say to my younger self.
Yes. That's an excellent thing to say to one's younger self. If only we could, eh?
I know.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kim. It's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you, and what a treat to have.
Well, thank you so
much. To have Lilian and Matt reunited.
Absolutely.
And to chat to you about your life. So thank you so much.
So would you be happy to...
Do you want me to play
fine harmonica? Would you be happy
I'll
to play it out of the podcast? So I'm going to say to you, and the listeners will enjoy this, goodbye, Tiger.
Goodbye, Pussycat.
Take it away, Tiger.
Take it away, Bluesman. Thanks for listening to our One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. If you'd like to see behind-the-scenes clips and bonus content, please visit our Facebook page, One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. And if you'd like to ask any questions, follow us on Twitter at OneStiletto65. This podcast is produced by Raggedy House Productions, and the music composed by Tom Smith. See you next time!